Okay, and we're live.
All right.
Everyone, welcome to episode 30 of the Technology for Good show. My guest on the show today is Kartik, who is an alumnus of this show. He was on before in one of the previous episodes. Kartik, you need to introduce yourself again because you've changed roles.
Yeah. So, hi, folks. I'm Kartik Kanakasabesan. I'm still with Cloud One, but I'll be joining another company soon in the cloud services division in Cisco.
Okay. Now, Cisco are a networking company, not a cloud company. So, what's all that about?
Well, I mean, so yes, there's bases in networking, but if you look at where they're heading and what they've been doing until recently, and if you heard the earnings announcements of Cisco just a couple of weeks ago, they are making significant inroads into the data center and IT. So,
Okay.
to a large extent, they're in the process of becoming a very strong IT player. Networking coming from a position of strength in networking doesn't hurt.
Yep.
But going forward, they're going to be a pretty dominant player to contend with in the IT cloud space as well.
Okay. So, jumping on the bandwagon along with everyone else.
Absolutely, absolutely. As that's where the market's heading.
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. No doubt. Good. We'll head into the stories, Kartik. The first one I saw was this one, and it was a story about global warming and mega droughts threatening the U.S. and all over. And the photograph that's there is a photograph of a lake, Lake Mendocino in California, and of course, California is at the moment going through an enormous drought. I think it's a 3-year drought at this point.
Yep.
Basically, this is, I won't go into this story in a lot of detail. The links will be in the show notes. Everyone can see it. It talks about future droughts, the probabilities of droughts in different states, and you can see those probabilities on this map here. And it's saying it's not different in other countries as well. And basically it's saying that, there will be times when there will be droughts lasting up to 10 years, what they call mega droughts. And this study that this is based off is an extremely conservative study. They have 3 different scenarios they talk about based on how or if we make any changes in our carbon reductions. And they're talking about the dust bowlification caused by a mega drought, and it's all pretty grim stuff, I gotta say. We always start the show off with a bit of a grim story. And it's always a climate-based story.
Right.
We generally go in for the better news stories after that, and we have a load of those lined up, so that's great. But this is one of the depressing ones I've seen in a while, I gotta say.
Hey, it is depressing, and mind you, when you look at the continuum of history, of at least human history on the planet, all major migrations of history of human beings has happened because of some kind of a climatic change.
Yeah.
I mean, if Africa had been bountiful and so on and so forth, our ancestors wouldn't have left the Horn of Africa. Probably, you and I would still have been there. Maybe neighbors, for all I care. All right.
I wouldn't have survived too well there with the red hair and the white skin.
I hear. Well, but that's because your ancestors migrated up north. So it does several thousand years of being exposed to, I guess, lack of sunshine and cold weather does have its effect. My ancestors had a different effect. But if you look at civilization in general, any migration or any kind of change in activity has always happened because of these dwindling resources. I think it's also, to me, it's a call to action too. Yes, there's dust bowlification, but unlike our ancestors, who to a certain point had very limited ways of actually managing resources and things like that, we happen to be in a generation where we're informed a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think, technologically, if there's even a word like that, but from a technological standpoint, we are far more ahead, in which we can use information like data and be able to shape our behaviors accordingly to do better resource management.
Exactly.
And I think that's the action item that needs to be taken out of this, is saying, okay, how can we better manage our resources knowing what our behavior patterns are and how they've led to this particular outcome and such.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that's a perfect segue into this next story. And this isn't a new story. This isn't one that came up in the last couple of weeks. I just came across it this week, so I said I'd drop it in there because it speaks to a kind of couple of things that I generally harp on about in these programs and bore people to death with. But it's important, I think, to remind people. This is the website of the EPA, and it's where they look at the rankings of people using renewable energy. And within those rankings, this is the section devoted to the top 30 in the technology and telecom space.
Right.
So if you look at the renewable energy purchasers in the US, in the technology and telecom space, the top 30 are, and I'm not going to go through all 30 of them, but the first ones there are Intel, Microsoft, Google, Apple, and there's Cisco right there, and followed by Dell. And it goes on down along. Now, one important point I think to note, because as you mentioned earlier, the world is getting into cloud computing, and fair enough, Cisco are right there, but also, when you think about cloud computing, Microsoft, Google, and Apple are numbers 2, 3, and 4. Now, I know Apple isn't the first person you think about when you think about cloud computing. Far from it. They're a consumer play, not an enterprise play in the cloud computing space. In terms of people hosting their photographs there, and we'll be talking about that shortly.
Yeah, we'll get to that topic.
But the other ones that are there, Microsoft and Google, and as I mentioned, Cisco, the company you're joining shortly in the cloud space, in at number 5. That's great to see. So I think I think to educate people into if they're thinking about looking for a cloud provider, one of the most important things when they're thinking about a cloud provider in terms of its sustainability initiatives or its green credentials are the amount of renewable energy or the percentage of renewable energy it uses. Now, Google is at 32%. It's still a large purchaser of renewable energy, but it's only at 32% of its total. Microsoft are at 50%, Apple are at 92%, and Cisco are at 40%. One of the important things to realize when you look at this is that Amazon are not there. They're not in the top 30. They're nowhere to be found. And it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. We have no idea, and there's no evidence that they buy any renewable energy. So moving any kind of cloud workload to an Amazon instance is not necessarily a clean or green way to go.
Well, but there's aspect to look at it too, right? Amazon may not be of green energy, right? But at the same time, they are the ones that have kind of made cloud computing ubiquitous, and to a certain point, they're also setting the price, which is at a commodity. I mean, they're the ones that have literally commoditized, if you will, cloud computing. All right, and it's a good thing that the companies that you listed there are doing that. Google, again, is also helping commoditize, if you will, cloud computing in general.
Yep.
But there's a point at which where you're burning money, and there's a point at which where you're actually profiting. All right, and I think you have to factor that equation in. If there are companies like Google, like Apple, that are also more forthcoming, saying by us investing in green, we're also more profitable. Just like, I mean, if you look at what's going on right now with this whole movement around treating your employees better to get better customer service and better customer experience, and actually, better investment by your stockholder, what return on investment to the stockholder, that kind of paradigm needs to come into the green space as well. And unless companies are not necessarily going to be forthcoming, I mean, I'll be honest with you, look at all their annual reports of these companies.
Yep.
Apple's probably the only one that stands out. A lot of these companies are flat from a revenue growth standpoint. So until these companies can really come forward and thump their chest and say, look, by us consuming green energy, it's actually reduced our cost in our hosting our data centers and everything else. To a certain point, as far as getting awareness at the user level, the consumer of these services level, at the end of the day, they don't really, I hate saying this, Tom, but they don't really care to a certain point. It's folks like you and I that may care.
They do. I mean, the bigger driver now of reporting of energy and emissions, things like shareholder pressure,
right,
and also risks. So the insurance companies are targeting companies to do this. So that's starting to be a big driver now for reporting of these kinds of data.
Right. Yeah.
And Amazon are resisting that so far. It's got to be a bit of a supply chain risk for anyone who uses Amazon because they don't know what's in their energy supply chain.
Exactly.
And when you talk about cost, you got to think that, yeah, sure, Amazon have led the cost up until recently, but now you've got a real war happening between the likes of Google, Microsoft, and Amazon in terms of the cloud computing space. So all pretty much in the same space in terms of their pricing. And yet Google and Microsoft are way out there in terms of their renewable energy portfolio for their computing.
Yeah, but I think the argument that's need to be, and I'm not intentionally trying to play devil's advocate here, Tom, but I think the argument that needs to be made here too is the fact that look at it from a profitability standpoint, because you hear this from we have certain institutions already in place based on consuming certain types of energy patterns. All right. It's the same argument that a lot of telcos company talk about too, is that they've laid the fiber optic and it's all over capacity under the ocean. And right now we're living off the dividends of it.
Yeah.
All right. And it's the same argument that can be made. So right now, if Apple or if Google and if Microsoft and those folks that are competing with Amazon in price are able to come and say, look, we can compete at these prices with Amazon, and by the way, we are also profitable. Yeah. And the reason why we're able to do that is because of the divestiture from traditional energy sources to more green energy sources. That's how we've been successful, and that's how we're sustainable, and so on and so forth. That is a more to anybody, because at the end of the day, you're the fact that ethanol is going to be expensive because there's transportation costs. You need different kind of containers and this, that, and everything else. Until Brazil started saying, oh well, we use flex fuel across the board, and that became a reality.
Yeah.
So I think somewhere down the line, the tipping point. I mean, the good thing is you've got all these folks there. We are very close to a tipping point forward.
I think maybe when we start to institute a carbon price of some kind that actually causes the polluter to pay, then we might see some greater movement in this space.
Yeah.
We'll keep going though, because we have a lot of stories to get through, and not a lot of time to do it in. So the next one, and we're staying with the cloud at this point, is this story from Microsoft, and it's a very quick one, but it was an interesting one to me, and it was that Microsoft, their OneDrive offering, has done away with its previous 2 GB file size limit. Now, I've only recently started using OneDrive, and the reason I started using OneDrive was because it gives me 15 gigabytes free, whereas the likes of Dropbox only gave me 5, and I think I have 7.5 now because I invited a couple of people into it. But I've got 15 gigabytes free with OneDrive. It works across devices. It doesn't matter whether it's Mac or PC. It's exactly the same as Dropbox in terms of its functionality, but I have twice the storage space free. I mean, what's not to love? And now they've done away with this file size limit. I'll be in Maine in a few weeks' time at the start of October for our annual Monktoberfest conference. And one of the things we do there is we film all the talks. I'm usually one of the ones involved in organizing that, so I have my video camera behind me here, and I bring that along with me with a couple of lenses, tripods, the whole thing. But the file sizes of some of those talks are enormous.
Right.
So now, if they are over 2 gigabytes, I don't need to worry. I'll just throw them into that OneDrive container, and they'll be there when I get home.
Right.
It's fantastic.
Tom, I'm surprised you didn't say Google Drive, because Google Drive already has been doing 15 gigs of storage for free anyway.
That's I have Google Drive as well, obviously.
Yeah.
Uh, I hadn't realized there was no file size limit on it. I only use the Google Drive for the docs and spreadsheets that I use
hmm
in Drive, and
Yeah.
I use that all the time. As you know, the document I shared with you
hmm
yesterday, the spreadsheet, that's a Google Doc, or it's a Google
Yeah.
spreadsheet. But you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I
Well,
use it all
but
the
yeah,
time.
the only catch with Google Drive is that the 15 gig storage they give you,
Mhm.
it's for your docs. It's for also your email storage.
Right.
All that is part of that comprehensive drive storage that they give you. Although I have to admit, I have actually expanded my usage of Google Drive because Dropbox. I kind of got dissuaded by Dropbox when they had the 2 gig limit.
Yeah.
So I haven't gone back to Dropbox and actually used their service, but I've since migrated onto Google Drive, and now I get like 100 gigs for what is it, $2 a month,
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's a pretty decent price to pay.
I tried to pay Dropbox.
hmm
I did. I tried to pay them. I clicked on the link to get the 100 gig or whatever it is,
hmm
and
hmm
they wouldn't accept the credit card.
oh,
And
oh boy, that's just bad.
this is the company credit card that I use to buy airline tickets. I use it for everything.
hmm
Hotels, the whole thing. I use it all over the world. I've never had a problem with it, and I've tried multiple times. Well, I did. It's about a year ago now.
hmm
I've tried multiple times, and
hmm
when they wouldn't accept it, I then went through their help site, located how to contact them, and sent them. Heard nothing back.
hmm
Nothing back, and then I just gave up and said, "Sod it, forget it. I'll find some other way around it."
Yeah. The other thing to kind of consider too is usually what works is if you have a U.S. PayPal account.
Right.
All right, and then hook your card to the U.S. PayPal account, and that way you can pay through two different methods. At least back when I used to live in Canada, when I used to work for IBM, I used to be working out of IBM Canada. And sometimes I would need to work with and collaborate with some of our U.S. clients, and I would need certain types of services, and that's the way I used to work around the system. Was
Right.
literally hook up with have a U.S. PayPal account, and that way pay through that, and usually used to work without any issues as such.
I think the issue with the card I have is it's an Amex card. It's a business card. The business is registered in the U.S., but my home residence on the card is Spain. So I think that just threw it completely for a loop. It couldn't handle that at all.
Yeah,
Oh,
and you see that's the unfortunate part is and this is what I think is something that not only businesses but even governments have to realize is folks like you and myself that are in the tech industry, where we are has now become absolutely irrelevant.
yeah.
The fact that we can collaborate and solve problems that were inconceivable in the past. I mean, going back earlier, we were talking about civilization. One of the reasons why you had the European civilization kind of prosper by itself and the Asian civilizations of India and China prosper by themselves, and then you had the Middle East, was because you had these silos of humanity kind of prospering amongst themselves with limited amount of messengers going back and forth and saying, oh, by the way, this is what happened. Everyone talks about zero being done by the Arabic numerals. Well, the reason was because the Arabs were talking to the Indians and Chinese, and they figured out that zero actually had a value, and finally made its way to Europe.
Yeah.
Today, that's not a problem. I mean, you can collaborate, and unfortunately, businesses and governments haven't really got on with the program yet, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. We're going to move on and talk. We've a few. I'm going to go through a couple of stories now, quickly because we've a lot of them, as I mentioned. And we're talking about stories now, not surprisingly, from kind of the security area, because we had a couple of security stories arise this week. So the first one, and this is an outcome rather than the story itself.
Right.
I don't think I need to raise the story. I think everyone is aware of it, and it's the story of these celebrities' iCloud accounts getting hacked. And the outcome of that, which arose today, you can see the date line here, September 5th today, Tim Cook has now come out and said that they're going to add extra security alerts for people who have two-factor authentication on their iCloud accounts. The issue was if you got somebody's credentials for their iCloud account, even if they had two-factor authentication turned on, as long as you knew their details, you could download their iCloud backup without them being notified at all. and that seems to be what happened in this case. So now they're adding the two-factor authentication to more things in the with the iCloud account, including downloading backups onto new devices and that kind of thing. So just from a purely selfish perspective, myself, I have an iCloud account. I have backed up photographs there. None of them nude ones, I have to say.
Yeah, let's not go there.
But it's good to know that my photographs are that bit safer as a result of this. I gotta say that, and I think that's all we really need to say about that. Unless there's anything you want to jump in with there, Kartik.
No. This is there's a couple of things here that are very subtle. I mean, think about it this way: we all talk about cloud and cloud computing as if everyone's kind of jumping on the bandwagon. And I can tell you this is that this actually makes a lot of the enterprise organizations more concerned than ever, because a lot of them still have invested a significant amount of their stuff in their own respective data centers.
Yeah.
And if you have other vendors coming at them and saying, "Oh, you got to move to the cloud. You got to move to the cloud," this kind of story, even though it is in the consumer market, doesn't necessarily help the cause. I mean, it's one news after another regarding NSA security, and now this nude photographs. I mean, when does it stop? I mean, people need to kind of get up and realize security. It's a big opportunity at the same time, but it also feeds in the fear, uncertainty, and doubt in this marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And the other, we'll keep going. The other, and there's a couple of stories in this space I wanted to talk about.
Sure.
So another outcome of this is that Apple have said that the developer rules for their HealthKit and HomeKit in iOS 8 have been changed, and now the HealthKit applications, so this is health applications that will use Apple's HealthKit platform, will be rejected from the App Store if they are putting data into iCloud. And I thought that was unusual because it sounds like they're almost saying we don't trust our own iCloud for holding your health information. Obviously, there's some kind of vault on the device that they're hoping to store, and it'll be secure. They're hoping to store people's health-related information. And keeping going, Apple are announcing next week. It hasn't been announced yet. So there's a big, for anyone who's unaware, there's a big Apple announcement next week on Tuesday, next September 9th. And the whole IT space has been cluttered with Apple-related stories around the new iPhones and the wearables and etc. that are coming next week. And I've tried to steer clear of a lot of that because a lot of it's in the realm of speculation. But I said I'd mention this one because it's interesting. It is that Apple are teaming up with Visa, MasterCard, and Amex as well, so that you will now, and they're catching up with Google on this, in fairness, you will now be able to use your phone and an NFC chip or a smartwatch or whatever to pay for goods and services. And one of the cool things about that, particularly on devices like the iPhone 5S and so on, is that they've got the fingerprint reader built in. So it's a nice extra bit of security. You've got the fingerprint reading, the NFC chip, so the phone knows exactly who you are. And that's a nice one for the likes of MasterCard, Visa, and Amex, who, at least in Europe, have chip and PIN, but in the US don't even have that. So
exactly.
It seems to be a nice bit of extra security for them. Sticking with security and privacy for a minute, Facebook announced this new privacy checkup that they're rolling out over the next couple of weeks to everyone who accesses Facebook from the website, and it'll lead you through your Facebook account to make sure you're aware of the implications of all the choices you've made, and walk you through. It's kind of like a wizard thing where it walks you through and says, are you sure you really want to do that? So that's nice as well, because for people who have Facebook accounts for quite a while or who are not quite sure what things meant, when you have this nice walkthrough, that'll be a nice option to help.
Yeah, I would love to see the A/B testing results of this stuff. Because to me, this was a no-brainer considering how people actually updated their Facebook profile anytime there was a privacy change before. It was literally, your friends updating their status saying, please go do this, that, and everything else. I'm surprised this was, it's finally done, thankfully.
Yeah,
But
and in fact, it was even more than that, Kartik. It was even more insidious than that because a lot of times Facebook themselves would make a change and they would default to sharing rather than default to private for their users.
Exactly.
So you would suddenly find that your profile picture would now be used in ads without you ever opting in for that. It was you were opted in, and it was up to you to go through the menus and find where to opt out.
Right.
So in the last 12 months or so, there's been a greater, I think, awareness of privacy, and I think Facebook are responding to that. And frankly, it's kind of not before time is what you want to say on this one.
I know. Actually, one feature of Facebook that still bothers me is that, for example, if you and I are friends on Facebook and I tag you on a picture, and let's say that picture has a picture of my kids and everything else and your kids, and I tag you, but apparently your friends now get to see the same picture, and I may have not wanted that.
Yeah.
So I think that's still one of the annoying features that I have, which is also one of the reasons why I don't tag pictures in my profile.
Okay.
Primarily just because when I do that, it opens up the door to potentially other folks that I may not be comfortable having them see pictures of my kids or my family.
Yeah. No, I understand that completely.
But going back to the Apple story, though, one thing that's going to be very interesting about the NFC chip and everything else is I'm actually more interested about the experience that Apple's going to bring to the table.
Yeah.
Because I was, when the NFC chip came in with Samsung and everything else, the experience was not necessarily very fluid.
Yeah. And this is absolutely where
one of the reasons I walked away from Google, and Google Wallet was the same thing too, because PayPal was there. I've stuck along with PayPal, but the Google Wallet experience was awful. It was awful.
Yeah, I tried it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was one of the early adopters, and I stuck along with it for a couple of years after it launched, and then after that I just gave up. I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done.
I've used I've an Apple phone, and I've used the Passbook application.
Yes.
I gotta say, and it is nice. It works really well. Iberia, who are because I'm based in Spain, Iberia, the company I fly with most, and they've got a nice Passbook integration. So when I get my tickets, they arrive, they go into my Passbook, and
I know.
It appears there on the lock screen. I don't even have to unlock the phone. I can go up and just put it down, and I'm checked in. And it's it's just well done. They do polish with their stuff.
I agree. By the way, the Iberia experience you're talking about is probably one of the best experience of the Passbook integration, because I can tell you, I travel a lot in the U.S. For me personally, I have to actually have the physical airline app on my phone.
Right. And
for certain airlines where, let's say, I'm not a frequent flyer member, right? They give me an email link, and I go to the email link and say add to Passbook, and then it adds on. I was like, why bother? If I'm installing your app on my phone, just give me a link to press button and add it to Passbook. Don't do that. But I'm not going to mention the airline names here, but for all intents and purposes, it's unfortunately, when I look at the Iberia experience, it is one of the few airline experiences for traveling, which is really utilizing the power that the Apple platform actually gives you in this context.
It's one of the few things they've done in tech that they've done well.
Exactly. Well, customer service, a different discussion.
And their website is appalling, and we won't go there. We won't.
Yeah, I know.
A rant, and we'll keep going with the good news stories.
Yeah, exactly.
So Twitter. This is the last of the security privacy stories, but I thought it was a nice one. There's this company called HackerOne, and what they are is they're basically a group of hackers for hire. So if you have a site, a site with a lot of traffic, and you want to see are there vulnerabilities in it, you can get HackerOne to launch a bug bounty for you, so that when people find bugs in your site, they are paid for reporting them in a responsible manner, and that way, it's in their interest to report them responsibly, and it helps you to fix your site and make your site more secure for your users. Now, several large companies have bug bounties out there. Some managed by HackerOne, some not. Facebook goes it alone. Others use HackerOne, but I think it's a great trend to see. Instead of companies trying to ignore bugs and hope they'll go away, now very much they're looking to have their bugs found for them and get them, and they work then to get them patched themselves.
I would love to see, what I'd love to see is kind of like what HackerOne does. I mean, if they do something like, like Netflix's Chaos Monkey.
I don't know that.
Oh, so here's what Netflix does. I mean, as part of the as part of their A/B testing that they go do, if you go to GitHub, there's a project called Chaos Monkey.
Right.
And what they intentionally do is, based on certain types of scenarios, introduce bugs into the product and see what kind of behavior flow actually surfaces that bug.
Oh.
All right. And what I would love to see is organizations that leverage HackerOne, for that matter, is looking at what kind of behaviors actually lead to that. So you can actually, going back to our initial outcomes discussion, what kind of behaviors actually lead to this particular type of outcome. So, let's say if today a new business comes up and wants to go leverage HackerOne services, HackerOne can technically have recipes, if you will, saying, oh, because you're of this particular kind of profile of a customer, this is some of the things that we've already covered for you, and these are some of the additional things that we will probably track for you, or something of that sort. But that would be kind of interesting to see if you can actually bring that kind of a rationale in seeing how people, what types of behaviors cause the thing to break,
right?
Versus, because there's, no matter how hard you try, you can, at least in this context, by the time you think you're a step ahead, the people that want to break your system will probably figure something out. And what you really want to focus on is the behaviors that actually drive to that particular outcome that breaks your system. So it would be nice to see if something like that were to manifest or appear in the GitHub space in some way, shape, or form. It will be interesting to see how that happens.
Yeah. No, true, very true. And I mean, I said that was the last of the stories in the security space, but it's not quite. We've one more, and it's now we're heading into the kind of communications space. And I came across kind of 3 semi-related stories in the communication space. The first one, this is a bit of a segue going from security into communications, and it's how hackers have now built a Skype, which is not controlled by Microsoft. Basically, it's this app called Talks, Talks, and it's an open source application which is not just encrypted chat, but also the ability to have calls and similar functionality to Skype, basically, but it's supposed to be end-to-end encrypted.
Wow.
It's a new app. There are clients for OS X, clients for PC, clients for Linux out there at the moment. Because it's new, it hasn't been properly battle tested yet. So no one is saying that it's absolutely secure. But it is using secure protocols and it's open source. So if there are bugs, I suspect they'll be found quite quickly. And then speaking of Skype, there's a new version of Skype which came out this morning, or was it yesterday at 2:30 p.m. on the Dateline. There you go, for iOS, which allows group audio calls, which was about freaking time, I gotta say. I don't know how that's been missing for so long. And the last kind of stories from the communication space is this one about Nokia planning a better map app for iOS and Android, and that's it. The only real surprise about that is that it's taken them this long, similar to the Skype one, I guess. It's taken them, this long to do that. I mean, they're no longer a handset and devices company. What have they got left except, mapping and mapping applications? So, let's get it out there on as many platforms as we can.
But I'm surprised. I'm surprised about the announcement, though, because considering the fact that they've been realigned with the Microsoft acquisition, you would think that they'd be spending more resources in potentially improving, if you will, the Microsoft mobile experience.
Yeah,
Uh,
I get that. But since the new CEO Satya Nadella took over in Microsoft, it's been
mhm,
interesting to watch where the updates have happened because
mhm,
you've started to see products from Microsoft be brought out for iOS and Android well ahead of Windows Phone
mhm.
because that's where the money is. That's where the
Yep.
users are. So it looks like they're not, uh, you know, putting their platform first. They're chasing where the most
Mhm.
users are. I mean, they get their one out as well,
Yeah.
but they go for the users first, and it makes a lot of sense.
No, I know. I agree. I think it's smart. It's just to me, I'm still getting used to
Different
Microsoft being
Microsoft.
that way, being different. Because I mean, it's 25 years, if not more, of this constant mentality. It's Windows, 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 um,
Yeah.
and to me right now, it's the way I feel about it. Every time I'm talking, when I see the Office for iPad look slick, it is a very slick application. And
Yeah.
for
It
a
is.
moment there, you end up pinching yourself, saying, "Is this really a Microsoft product?" Because you would expect that experience to be more on the Microsoft mobile device than it would be
Yeah.
on an Android or an Apple phone. So
Yeah.
I'm still I mean I wish Microsoft all the best. I mean that they're doing the right things. It's just I haven't mentally caught up with their line of thinking as of yet, and I think neither the market has to a certain extent. Anytime they do something of this sort, it's like, are you really Microsoft, or there's got to be some kind of a catch somewhere there where someone's expecting me, like the other shooter drop in this case. So, well, we'll see how
Yeah,
things go.
yeah, 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 yeah. The next kind of space we're heading into is, and the mapping is a bit of a segue. It's into the kind of transportation arena,
Oh,
and see some news from there. The first is talking about new studies showing why Uber makes cities more productive and less congested. And I suppose if you sit back and think about that for a second, there's no big surprise there. I mean, when they talk about ride sharing and the things like that, you know, it makes a hell of a lot of sense that if more people are being carried around the city in fewer vehicles, obviously the city will be more productive and less congested. And these are two studies out of UC
mhm,
Berkeley, and I forget where the
mhm,
second one came from, but these are not studies that were funded by Uber and run by the nearest marketing company they could find.
mhm.
No, MIT is the other one. So Berkeley and
Yeah.
MIT ran these studies, so they're
Mhm.
pretty rigorous. So, and as
Well,
I say, no
yeah.
huge surprise there. The other
Yeah.
one for the transportation space that I thought was interesting was this one, this company Automatic.
Mhm.
And Automatic make this kind of plug-in device that you plug into I think it's called the ADP port on your
Mhm.
car,
Mhm.
and it's got a Bluetooth connection, it's got GPS, so it allows you to, draw maps of where you've gone to and from. And nothing hugely extraordinary there, but then it also builds in things like miles per gallon, and it builds in all kinds of data about the engine that you can't get from anywhere but your car. So it's taking all of the engine-related and driving-related data from your car,
Mhm.
allowing you, and this is through a web interface. They brought it to the web now because it was phone based before, but now it's phone and web based. So now you get all that data, you've got the history of it there, you can interrogate it, you can slice and dice it any way you want. So it seems to be a really, really nice uh, development of the automatic application.
Right. Well, going back to your Uber story, as a customer of Uber,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I mean, I think it's about time. Zipcar I thought was probably going to be one thing that would actually help congestion and decrease congestion, which
Yep.
to a certain point it did. I think Uber just takes it to the next level. Um,
Agreed.
Now, with regards to the other application that you were talking about, what I think what would be interesting is also when people, like if you look at Waze as an example, what I like about Waze is first of all it's community driven, but it also reorients you based on traffic jams and so on and so forth.
Yep.
What would be great is if I could look at all the telemetry information from my engine and the miles per gallon and everything else, along with all the reroutes, and say what is the most efficient way when I reroute you based on a particular traffic pattern to get you to your destination. And the great thing about that is that that application would then not only be useful for individual drivers or even Uber drivers, but also, your regular transportation organization, bus routes, and so on and so forth. Like the city of Malmo, they do this on a regular basis. This is something that they do as part of their reorienting bus, so that people know that when to be at the bus stop at the right time. I mean, they bring it down to the way Germans have bought train schedules,
right.
To the clock.
Yeah. And I mean, when you have cars making more efficient journeys through a city, you're reducing the amount of congestion, and the amount of time that cars are stuck in lines of traffic with the engine going, spilling fumes out the back of the car.
Exactly.
For no good reason. So between that and the kind of smart things, the street line type applications. I don't know if you're familiar with Streetline, but they're a smart parking company. And there's a number of them. They're the one that comes to mind straight off, because I know the CEO there. So there's a bunch of those as well. That again, you've got parking applications on your device, and they hook up with. They've got sensors in the ground in parking spaces in cities, so they can tell when parking spaces are free or not. So, when you're reducing the amount of time people are circling the block looking for a parking space, or you're reducing the congestion when you get people directly to where they want to go to, you're doing a lot for the air quality of the city as well as anything else.
Exactly. No, this is an interesting space. I think this is something that is actually going to grow exponentially to a certain point, because whether it's individual vehicles or getting into things like public transit, but it's also about smart transit.
Yeah.
Which is going to be great. And I think the other application of this could be is when you're traveling in Europe. One of the great things about when I travel in Europe is the railway system is so really well integrated, and to kind of figure out exactly how to transfer change. If I'm going from Barcelona to Hamburg, change versus the traditional spots where people do changeovers. So it may not be at a hub location, but maybe something prior or after, where there's a better, efficient way to change over and actually use less energy. The permutation combination of this particular field is just immense. I mean, it gives me goosebumps talking about it.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I'm so used to it here. There are a lot of exceptions, obviously, but a lot of big airports here. Madrid, there's a metro station in Madrid, so you get off the plane, you get on the metro, and you get into the city center. But somewhere like Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam is fantastic, because it's not a metro station it has there. It has one of the main central train stations there. So you get out in arrivals, you go down one floor, and you're in the train station.
Right.
And you can go from there to anywhere in the Netherlands. Now, Netherlands is a big country, but you know what I mean. You're on the European rail network at that point, so you can go anywhere in Europe either. So it's nice joined up thinking, and the more that we have in our transportation system, by far and away, the better.
Yeah, exactly.
Changing topics again. And this, just a quick one I dropped in is this is kind of a social story, social media, for people who blog, and I know that's kind of a dying art. Blogging was big in around between 2005 and 2010, and it's been taken over now by the likes of initially Tumblrs, and then Facebooks and Twitter, and people writing short stories and a couple of lines and short posts now rather than actual long meaty blogs. But for those who are still interested in blogging, and I count myself amongst those, WordPress has released its version 4, which they've called Benny, in honor of Benny Goodman, the clarinetist and band leader. All of the WordPress releases are named after jazz greats. So it's a new release, it's a new version, it's got some nice functionality built in. Nothing huge, nothing revolutionary, but things like when you're in the back end of WordPress and you're adding in a YouTube link, for example, you can just paste in the YouTube URL. You don't have to have embed code, and you'll see a preview of what it'll look like there in your post. Before you actually post it, in your compose field, and that's one of the biggest changes in it. So nothing's
Well,
new
that's a
there.
big one. That's a big one because sticking YouTube code in, you had to actually always get, right click, get the embed code,
That's right.
come to
Yeah.
WordPress, stick it in, make sure it rendered properly.
Yeah.
In my case, I would even go to the HTML and kind of make sure it's centered versus
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
justified or left justified. So, no,
Yeah.
this is great.
It's nice. It is nice. It is. I was delighted to see it. For people who don't. For people who don't use WordPress or who don't embed videos, it's not a big one, so we won't spend too much time on it. But it's I thought it was a nice one. The other nice one is here you can see this is the post field, and basically it's an infinitely expanding post field now. You had to click and drag to make it longer before if you wanted it to if you were writing a long post, but now you just keep on typing and it keeps growing as you type.
I wish the guys at LinkedIn actually look at this stuff because I've just moved my couple of my blogs from my personal website, which is a WordPress website, to LinkedIn. And one of the most annoying things I see about LinkedIn, because like for example, when I'm writing, at least you see the toolbar kind of scrolling down with you as you type.
Right.
With LinkedIn, this is the most annoying feature. I know we're talking about WordPress here, but with LinkedIn, it's that when you type, the toolbar stays at the top. So anytime you want to embed something, you have to scroll all the way up, go to the toolbar, do that. So I know this sounds kind of a meaningless feature, but from a convenience standpoint, it's the most annoying thing when you're writing a blog.
I would never anyway blog on LinkedIn. Why would I give them my content? I'll keep it on my own site. And
I hear you.
I have I think it's an IFTTT integration, which means every time I publish a post on GreenMonk, it's automatically linked to on LinkedIn for me. So
okay.
So I don't need to worry about that. We're moving into the IoT space, the Internet of Things space, though, and there's a couple of stories here. So the first one I saw was this Elgato's HomeKit ready sensors automate your entire home, and Elgato is a company who make a number of devices, but now they have these things, the Eve Room, the Eve Weather, the Eve Water for measuring how your water consumption, Eve Energy for energy consumption, smoke detector, and door and window sensors and things like that. The other ones I wanted to talk about were Microsoft. This is the Microsoft Ventures site, and all these links will be in the post afterwards. They selected, along with an insurance company called American Family Insurance, they selected a number of startups and entrepreneurs. They selected 10 of them for an accelerator that they're putting together. And this story goes through the 10 and what they do. So you've got Chai Energy, HeatWorks, Nura, Novi Security, Ramo, Plum, Red Balloon Securities, Scanlytics, Sentries, and Wallflower. And they all do different aspects of smart homes. So I thought that was nice. I thought that the post itself, I thought the fact that Microsoft were looking at this space, and I also thought the fact that we've got the 10 companies there and what it is they're doing. So I thought, all in all, this was a nice post with some really good information there around the smart home space, and good to see Microsoft getting into the space again. They were in it before, but they jumped out of it. And the last of the IoT things that I wanted to mention was this Withings new HomeKit integrated video monitoring sensor and environmental sensor. So basically, this is just this company Withings, who they have health and fitness tracking accessories. They now have this device here on the right of the phone, which is basically a camera with a very wide field of view, and it's got a few other sensors built into it, and it allows you to monitor your home remotely, and it'll pick up things like crying sounds and alert you and things like that. So basically, I mean, the bottom line to take away from these couple of stories is that there's a lot happening in the smart home space. Not just the Withings one, but the 10 ones that Microsoft are talking about, and the Elgato one as well, which is lots of sensors. So more and more our houses are going to start to become extremely automated.
Well, but there goes, going back to earlier about energy consumption, about some of the cloud providers. This is literally kind of affecting behavior in your house.
Yeah.
So
it's similar to what I was talking about earlier, wearing this Fitbit Force to allow me to quantify the recuperation from the operation, how many steps I'm taking, sleep patterns, all that kind of thing. So that's me quantified, but now I can get all these other devices and start quantifying the energy use in the house, the water use in the house, and all the other things, the door usage, window utilization, all that kind of stuff as well.
And exactly. Going back to what we were talking about earlier before we went on air. It's all about the outcomes, right? If I'm buying the Withings camera, what am I buying? I'm not buying the Withings camera unless it's you and I who like to geek out on technology. But it's about safety, right? My family's safety, or if it's about the Elgato line of home automation products. They're not targeting people that want to buy cool ways to monitor how they're using. What they're trying to do is how people want to save money.
Yeah.
So again, this to me, this whole space is, again, it's also just like kind of like the analogous to the maps, the map and efficient routing of mapping and so on and so forth. To me, it's an extension of that kind of mindset. Yeah. To really talk about lifestyle outcomes that will help us be, if you will, a better version of ourselves, along with our environment that we currently have, in which we're now much more informed of, our actions by doing this can have the following set of outcomes. Yeah. All right. So if we crank up our AC, all the way during the peak summer months, well, the outcome of that is going to be that dust bowl effect that you're seeing on the other end. And you want to do that. So now you can actually see that whole consequence aspect of it, which is good and to a certain extent help us, like I said, be a better version of ourselves.
Yeah. I think people are probably going to be more incentivized by the outcomes as opposed to the consequences. Sometimes the consequences are too far away, but the outcomes are more immediate. So anyway, we'll keep going. There's a couple more things. I mentioned briefly earlier the Apple announcement next week. Right. And I said I was going to try and steer clear of that because most of the stuff about that's still in the realm of speculation. We won't know until next week. Right. And that reminds me, there won't be a show next week. I'll be traveling, so I won't be able to do this show next week. So next show.
Well, safe travels.
Thank you. But there was a big conference in Berlin this week, the IFA conference, and we saw a lot of announcements come out of that. And I'm just going to whip through some of those because there was too many, and they're all competing, and it's there's just too many basically. So I'll whip through some of them very quickly. And the first one came from Intel, and it talks about this thing Mica, which is its first luxury smart bracelet. So it's Intel getting into the wearables space. Not one I would have seen them get into, but they seem happy enough to be in there. Whether that'll ever take off, I'm not 100%. But others in that space, and this is a nice one. This is one of the new smartwatches, and this particular one comes from Motorola. It's their Moto 360, and it's the kind of smartwatch that doesn't look nearly as geeky as a lot of the smartwatches I've seen. LG also announced their versions of their smartwatches, and they look a little more geeky. I don't know if you can see them on the screen there. I've blown it up a little bit. They've got the colorful Android Wear face on there. Not sure if I'd be jumping towards those. Then we had a lot of announcements in the handset space this week. And the first one is, I said I wouldn't get into the speculation on the iPhone.
So much for that.
But so much for that. This was, I put this in here because there was a lot of announcements around handsets, so I said, okay, look, I'll mention the iPhone one as well. But so this particular one goes into a lot of detail about what the iPhone 6 will look like, including there's a video of an iPhone 6. Hang on, scroll down. It's there. There it is. So that's the video of the iPhone 6, and it's quite an interesting one. If you're interested in phones and handsets and things, that's a good one.
Yeah, funny enough, there's Cyrillic characters in it. I wonder where that hack video came from.
That's a coincidence, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Huawei, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not, but they came out their new Ascend Mate 7 with a huge display, minimal bezel, and 8 cores in the chip. And you can see they have an infographic here showing an iPhone 5S with 62% of its face being the screen. The S5 69, the Note 4 80%, and then their Ascend Mate 7, the screen being 83% of the face. So that's one of the big.
This is the thing that annoys me every single time when I see Samsung does this, Huawei does this, the other Chinese company that Xiaomi, I can't pronounce their name correctly as well, but they all focus on meaningless things, because I type with my one hand while I'm using my cell phone, or if I'm not being able to place a call or do particular things with my app. I really don't care how many cores the thing actually has. I need people to do things I want to go do for all I care. And it's unfortunate when you see these kind of companies kind of focusing on these commodity things to kind of differentiate themselves when they really don't mean much.
Yeah. I
mean, by putting 8 cores in, what has Wally done for me?
Yeah. No,
so
I hear you. I do. But that's the nature of it, I guess. Is that they're all doing that kind of thing, and you can see it here again. The new Moto G offers a bigger screen and removable storage, and then we have the Lenovo, which didn't load properly, but let me see if I can.
Yeah.
Size. Anyway, it's a Me Too announcement from Lenovo. They've got their Vibe X2, Vibe Z2, 64-bit and 8-core chips. Basically,
I did see ZTE there too. Did they make an announcement too that I missed?
No, I don't see it here.
No, probably in one of the screens you were moving back and forth. I saw the ZTE sign there. I was like, okay, did they make a? Yeah. Anyway, no.
The Moto G and the Lenovo. So that's the handsets thing covered off. The last story I wanted to talk to, and I need to close at the top of the hour because I have another call afterwards, unfortunately. Right. The last story is a bit of a real good news one, and this is the X Prize, the
I saw that. Yeah.
X Prize. It's a really nice one, and this is from New Scientist Health. Basically, they've got 10 finalists for this prize, and the tricorder is the thing from Star Trek where they hold a box in front of somebody and scan it up and down, and they'd say immediately what was wrong with them. So we're not going to get a tricorder when this prize is given away in a year's time or a year and a half's time, I think, when the finalist is judged. The 3 prizes, 7 million, 2 million, and 1 million for the top 3 prize winners, but they come at it at different ways, the 10 finalists. The story goes into a little bit of detail on each of them and the way they're doing it. Some of them have even tried it in 0G, so that it can be used for space voyages and things like that. And they've all come with different ways of using like microstrips or things like that on blood tests to do the maximum possible with the minimum possible space. And the whole area of e-health is really, really taking off, and technology in health is really, really taking off. And it's phenomenal to see things like this encouraging companies to go out and dream big and come back with something fantastic. And as we're going, you mentioned commoditization of devices, and it's true. There's a lot of that going on. But when we've got these computers with those commodity devices in them in our hands now, we've access to far more in terms of technology, personal technology, to allow us to take in data from devices like this, or if we have sensors around the home, and check it on our devices here, or if we've health-related ones, monitoring our heart and things like that. It completely changes the game, and this is something on previous shows as well. If I go into a doctor's office, and I'm not feeling 100%. One of the first things the doctor will do will he'll take my blood pressure and he'll maybe listen to my heartbeat. The thing is, I'm in a doctor's office. It's a stressful place. Whereas if I can take out my phone and share with that doctor my heartbeat and blood pressure and other health metrics for the last 6 months. I can do that right now with my footsteps and my sleep pattern, right now with the Fitbit. But as we get more sensors and we become more quantified, that kind of data suddenly, is far more meaningful than heart rate information or blood pressure information, which is just a snapshot at a time when you're under stress anyway, because you're in a doctor's office, and you might have been in the waiting room for 40 minutes with people who are sick all around you, and you're looking at your watch saying, "I have an appointment in 10 minutes. I can't wait here much longer. I hope he's going to finish soon." If you have the difference between that snapshot versus the weeks and months of information.
What you're highlighting there is also a very subtle thing. It's the whole definition of heuristics, right? Redefinition, if you will, of heuristics of a typical experience. All right. And yes, it does annoy the heck out of me when people use these as differentiators and commoditization. But at the end of the day, what you're talking about is the information, the fact that information is something that's relevant to you, and you can actually do something about it. That's where the value comes in, and that's one of the things. Google does it a bit, but Apple has literally taken the field when it comes to it. You actually get actionable data to actually do something with your life versus sitting on the couch and just kind of like a zombie going through your Facebook updates or whatever it is. But it's literally that's where the value is. You're able to build actionable instances from information from different sources, and granted, at the back end, it's doing all kinds of parametric and not a linear regression of the back end to come up with the right kind of answers. But at the end of the day, for somehow you believe this automated piece of analytics that's being thrown at you, and you say, okay, yes, I should do this X, Y, Z. It's interesting.
No, it's fascinating. I think I've said it a lot of times in the last few months. The amount of change that we're starting to see in the healthcare industry as a result of technology in the last 6-12 months and in the next 5 years is just going to be absolutely incredible.
Well, take this last statement here too. Is consider this: over the last 2,000 years of human history, we generate more information in a given day than the entire information that was generated over the last 2,000 years of human history.
Right.
Think about that for a minute.
Yeah. Pretty intense. It's pretty intense.
Exactly. Anyway, I think we're at the top of the hour.
We are, and I'm sorry I have to cut it off, but I have another call waiting for me. I have to join now. I normally don't mind running a few minutes long, but Kartik, thanks a million. It's been great again. Thank you for that. You jumped in at the last minute when somebody else dropped out, so much appreciated for that. As I mentioned, there'll be no show next week. I'll be traveling, but we'll be back again in 2 weeks' time. Thanks everyone for your time and your interest, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. All the best.
All right. Hey Tom, take care.